Serenity Parker sat alone in her Seattle penthouse, staring at the cream-colored envelope that carried her mother's handwriting. She whispered, "So, after 3 years they suddenly want me back?" Her fingers trembled slightly, not from fear but from the weight of memories she had never asked to carry. Her family still believed she lived in a tiny apartment, struggling to survive. None of them knew she owned 3 tech companies worth over $1 billion. She sighed softly and said, "Thanksgiving dinner. This should be interesting." For the first time in years, she wondered what would happen if she finally returned home. Serenity grew up as the middle child of Judge Henry Parker and Dr. Linda Parker, 2 parents who believed perfection was the only acceptable language. At the dinner table, Henry would tap his fork and ask, "Explain your grades." Linda would whisper, "Failure is not in our blood." Her older brother, Mark, became a top lawyer. Her younger sister, Victoria, became a celebrated doctor. Serenity had once matched their brilliance, earning top grades and a place in medical school. But she had discovered coding, discovered creativity, discovered freedom. And she soon learned that the Parker household had no room for dreams that didn't follow the family script. She remembered the day she walked out of medical school. She had been standing in an operating room when her phone buzzed with a life-changing offer. A major company wanted to buy her healthcare algorithm for $2 million. That number echoed in her mind like a door opening to a new life. "This is not my path," she whispered, removing her gloves. When she told her family, they gathered like a courtroom ready for sentencing. Her father used words like disgrace. Her mother cried, "You threw away greatness." Serenity stood silent, knowing the life they wanted for her was not the life she wanted for herself. By 28, Serenity had already built an empire in secret. She lived in a small apartment, telling no one she had millions flowing into her accounts every month. She wore simple clothes and drove an old car, blending in while building her companies from the shadows. At night she whispered to herself, "No expectations, no limits." Her family, unaware of everything, told friends, "Serenity is still finding her path." They even believed she might be working at a coffee shop. Serenity laughed quietly whenever she heard that. If only they knew, she would say, closing deals worth more than her father's lifetime earnings. Then came the invitation that stirred the whole quiet world she had built. A heavy envelope with the Parker family seal. Inside, her mother's note read, "It's time to come home. We want to help you get back on track." Serenity actually laughed out loud. Back on track. If only you knew what track I'm on. She turned the letter over in her hand, imagining the dinner table where they once called her a disappointment. She whispered, "Maybe it's time they see the truth." And with that, she opened her laptop, booked a flight, and prepared to walk into a house that still believed she had failed. Serenity boarded the plane 2 days later, wearing a soft gray sweater that looked ordinary but cost more than her family would ever guess. She whispered, "One step at a time," as she settled into her seat. During the flight, her CEO phone buzzed non-stop. Messages about partnerships, budgets, and a meeting request from a European investor. She handled them calmly, typing quickly, then switching her device back into its simple mode, hiding her real identity. She smiled at the irony. "They think I'm struggling," she murmured. "Meanwhile, I run half of Seattle's tech industry." The contrast made the upcoming reunion feel even more unreal. When Serenity arrived at the Parker estate, she felt the familiar heaviness of old memories settle on her shoulders. The house looked exactly the same, grand, cold, and full of expectations. Her Aunt Dorothy rushed out first saying, "Oh, Serenity, sweetheart, you look healthy." Serenity immediately understood what that meant in Parker language. Inside, the house smelled of old wood and expensive candles. Her mother walked down the stairs with practiced grace and said, "We're so glad you came home." Her father simply nodded. Serenity noticed how everyone's eyes scanned her clothes, her hair, her posture, searching for signs of the failure they believed she had become. Dinner that night was a quiet performance. Serenity sat near the middle of the long table, surrounded by relatives whispering about her absence. Her cousin whispered, Are you working now? Another asked, do you need help finding a job? Serenity kept her smile calm and replied, I'm doing some tech work. Her father leaned forward and said, Is it stable? We worry you don't have a real career yet. Serenity sipped her water and said, I'm comfortable. They interpreted it as denial. She could feel the pity around her like a fog. None of them imagined she earned more in 1 month than their entire table combined. After dinner, her father invited her into his study. He closed the door softly and began speaking in the voice he used for difficult verdicts. Serenity, your life has drifted too far from structure. We've arranged opportunities to help you rebuild. He slid a folder toward her, filled with job listings and programs. Serenity listened respectfully, though inside she felt a strange mix of sadness and amusement. Dad, she said gently, I'm not lost. He shook his head. You think that now, but you need guidance. His certainty was so strong he couldn't imagine she had already built something greater than anything in his folder. Later that night, Serenity stepped onto the terrace for air. Her phone buzzed, a call from her CFO. She answered quietly. Yes, approve the contract. No, increase the bid to 100 million if needed. Yes, I'll review the documents at midnight. Her uncle, stepping outside for a smoke, overheard her voice and froze. He stared, confused, unable to match her calm authority with the fragile woman they'd been discussing all day. When she ended the call, he asked softly, Serenity, what job is that? She smiled politely. Just consulting. He nodded slowly, not believing it, but unable to imagine the truth. The next morning began with Uncle Robert's career counseling session. He had arranged charts, folders, and a long presentation titled Rebuilding Your Professional Path. Serenity sat quietly as he explained entry-level jobs she could apply for. A receptionist role might be a good beginning, he said warmly. It gives structure. Serenity nodded politely. He asked her to describe a normal workday. When she mentioned meetings and team reviews, he smiled patiently and said, Structure is good for the mind. She didn't correct him. She simply whispered, Thank you for trying. He believed she was being humble. In truth, she was being merciful. Halfway through the session, Serenity's phone buzzed again. She excused herself and stepped into the hallway. Yes, push the launch by 48 hours. No, don't approve the funding until legal reviews it. Yes, I'll sign after the revision, she said firmly. When she returned, Uncle Robert blinked at her. Serenity, that sounded serious. She smiled gently. Just another project. He nodded, still thinking she was freelancing for pennies. He returned to his charts, showing her salary expectations for low-income positions. You'll get back on your feet, he said proudly. Serenity whispered, I've never left my feet. But he didn't hear the truth inside her words. Lunch was served in the conservatory where sunlight spilled across polished floors. Serenity sat between two aunts who took turns offering gentle advice. You must not give up, one said kindly. Life starts at 40, the other added. Serenity nodded, grateful for their hearts even if they misunderstood her life completely. Across the room, her mother watched her with soft worry in her eyes. Mark whispered to a cousin, She's trying. That's what matters. Serenity heard it but pretended not to. Every word reminded her how deeply they believed this version of her. Small, fragile, unaccomplished. They had no idea she had outgrown all of that long ago. Later, Serenity met with her cousin Brad for financial planning. He placed a binder titled Starting Over in front of her. Inside were worksheets about budgeting and saving $20 a month. This will help you feel in control again, he said with sympathy. What's your current income? Serenity hesitated before replying. It varies. Brad wrote unstable in his notes. Don't worry, he said. Stability will come. As he explained compound interest with colorful charts, Serenity whispered softly. I know. But again, no one heard the truth. She could buy every house on the block without making a dent in her accounts. Her phone rang again, interrupting Brad's lesson on grocery budgeting. Yes, adjust the bid. No, keep the offer confidential. Yes, the European partners agreed, she said quickly. Brad stood behind her, listening, confused. Serenity. That didn't sound like a budgeting issue. She smiled faintly. Just a technical matter. He frowned kindly. You're under a lot of stress, cousin. Let us help you. She nodded, knowing their help, though well-intended, came from a story about her that wasn't real. If she opened her financial dashboard in front of them, half the room would faint. But she wasn't here to shame them. She was here to understand them. That evening, the family gathered around the fireplace. Conversations swirled about careers, promotions, and children's achievements. Serenity sat quietly on the sofa as whispers floated around her. Poor girl, she tried her best. At least she's here. She'll find her way eventually. Serenity closed her eyes briefly and breathed in. She wasn't angry, just tired. Tired of being seen through a lens built from assumptions. Her mother touched her shoulder gently and whispered, "Tomorrow will be better." Serenity smiled softly. "Maybe," she replied. The truth was, tomorrow would be better, but not in the way her mother imagined. A revelation was coming, and she could already feel the ground shifting. Saturday morning brought Aunt Margaret's life coaching session. She greeted Serenity with a bright smile and a stack of pastel-colored worksheets. "Today," she said, "you will confront your inner fears." Serenity held back a laugh. "All right," she whispered. "Margaret made her write sentences like I am enough and I deserve second chances." Serenity wrote them carefully, even though her real fears had nothing to do with failure, only with being misunderstood. Then came the breakthrough moment. Margaret asked her to say, "I accept my new path." Serenity whispered the line gently, though she wasn't walking a new path. She had built her own path entirely from scratch. During the session, Serenity's laptop pinged with urgent alerts. A major software issue threatened millions in revenue. She opened the device and began typing fast, coordinating engineers across 3 countries. "Move the patch, reroute the servers. Test the fix before rollout," she instructed. Margaret watched with wide eyes. "Serenity, what job is this?" Serenity answered calmly, "Just some tech work." Margaret blinked, unsettled. She had expected a woman searching for direction, not someone who commanded global teams with ease. But her mind couldn't connect the dots. "You're overwhelmed," Margaret whispered. Serenity simply smiled. If only her family knew she wasn't overwhelmed. She was in control. That afternoon, Serenity walked through the garden to clear her mind. Mark found her there, hands in his pockets, face tight with concern. "Serenity, you okay?" he asked softly. She nodded. "Just thinking," he sighed. "I know things have been hard for you, but we're trying to help. You don't have to hide your struggles." Serenity looked at him gently. "Mark, what if I'm not struggling?" He stared at her confused. "You don't have to pretend," he insisted. Serenity smiled faintly and touched his arm. "Just wait," she whispered. "Soon, everything will make sense." Mark didn't understand, but he trusted her tone enough to stay quiet. Inside the house, Victoria was organizing medical journals on the mantel when Serenity entered. "You look tired," Victoria said kindly. Serenity replied, "Just a long day." Victoria hesitated before adding, "I know things didn't go the way any of us expected, but you're still family." Serenity nodded. "Thank you." Victoria reached into her pocket and handed her a card. "A career counselor I trust. She helps people restart." Serenity accepted it with a warm smile. "That's thoughtful." Victoria looked relieved, unaware that Serenity had recently hired consultants with salaries 10 times larger than the counselor's fee. Serenity tucked the card away gently, knowing soon everything would change. That evening, everyone dressed for the formal dinner. The long table glowed under crystal lights, and Serenity felt dozens of eyes drifting toward her. She wore a simple black dress. Quiet, elegant, impossible to price unless you knew true luxury. Her uncle whispered to another relative, "She's trying her best." Her mother rose to give a small speech about family unity and supporting Serenity through her journey. Serenity lowered her gaze, listening calmly. She had no desire to embarrass anyone, but she felt the truth rising inside her like a quiet flame. Tonight, one way or another, they would see her differently. Halfway through dinner, her phone vibrated again. This time the matter couldn't wait. The German partners handling her billion-dollar expansion needed her approval immediately. "Please excuse me," she whispered and stepped into her father's study. She opened a video call where lawyers and executives waited. "We can proceed with the 1.1 valuation," she said firmly. "Send the final draft." Her voice carried down the hallway. Her sister Victoria had come looking for her and froze in the doorway. Serenity ended the call and met her shocked eyes. "Vic," Serenity whispered. Victoria stepped back, whispering, "Serenity, what on earth was that?" Serenity closed the laptop slowly. "It's work," she said quietly. Victoria shook her head. "That wasn't work, that was something huge." Serenity hesitated, then answered softly, "It's my company." Victoria stared at her as if seeing her for the first time. "You own that company? The one in the news? The one changing supply systems?" Serenity didn't reply. Silence said enough. Victoria sank into their father's leather chair, whispering, "You built all that, while we thought you were struggling." Serenity sat beside her. "I didn't need pressure," she said gently. "I needed space." Victoria looked at her long and quiet. "We were wrong," she whispered. They returned to dinner separately, still processing everything. Serenity kept calm, but Victoria's eyes never left her. Mark noticed first. "What's going on?" he whispered. Victoria shook her head slightly. Later, Serenity ate quietly, hearing whispers drift across the room. "She's doing her best. Poor girl. I hope she finds purpose." Every sentence was wrapped in misunderstanding. Serenity exhaled deeply. She didn't want revenge. She didn't want to humiliate them. She only wanted to stop playing a character in a story she never wrote. But the night was only beginning, and the truth had already slipped through one door. More would follow. After dinner, Serenity stood near the window as guests moved around the room. Mark approached her with careful steps. "Serenity, what did Victoria hear?" he asked. Serenity met his eyes. "Something true." Mark folded his arms. "Tell me." She hesitated. "Later." His eyes narrowed with growing suspicion. "You're hiding something." She smiled faintly. "You know me better than that." He didn't. Not anymore. Mark walked away confused, unaware that the sister he thought needed rescuing was running a global empire. Serenity turned back to the window, watching snow begin to fall. She whispered, "Soon, everything will come out." Later that night, the family gathered for tea and desserts. Serenity sat quietly while her mother thanked everyone for being patient with Serenity's journey. Her father raised a glass, saying, "Tomorrow we finalize her support plan." Serenity felt a soft ache in her chest. Not anger, just a quiet sadness for how little they truly knew her. Then her mother placed an envelope in front of her. "This is to help you restart," she said warmly. Inside was a $5,000 check. Serenity looked up gently. "Thank you," she whispered. It wasn't the money. It was the assumption behind it that stung the most. The final day arrived with tense whispers drifting through the house. Serenity dressed in a soft cream sweater, preparing for the closing dinner. Mark found her again in the hallway. "Serenity, please talk to me," he said quietly. She looked into his eyes. "Mark, what if everything you assumed about me wasn't true?" He frowned. "Then why didn't you correct us?" Serenity answered softly, "Because it wouldn't have mattered then." Something changed in his expression, a mixture of fear and realization. "You're not who we thought you were," he whispered. Serenity nodded. "I never was." This time he didn't walk away. In the dining room, the table was set with the best china. 40 relatives gathered, expecting Serenity to accept their guidance. Her mother stood proudly. "As you all know," she began, "we've created a support fund to help Serenity rebuild her life." Murmurs of approval spread through the room. Serenity's hands rested calmly on the table. Her mother continued, "We hope she accepts this generous gift and the counseling we arranged." Serenity glanced at Mark and Victoria. Both watched her closely, one confused, one bracing. The moment was coming. A quiet storm waited inside Serenity's chest, steady and unafraid. Her mother placed the envelope in front of her again. "It's $50,000, she announced proudly. "It will help you get back on your feet." The room applauded softly. Serenity rose slowly. "I appreciate your kindness," she said gently. "But I won't be needing it." Confusion rippled across the table. Her father frowned. "Serenity, this is no time for pride." Serenity reached into her pocket, pulled out her phone, and opened her main banking app. She turned the screen toward them. Gasps filled the room. Her mother staggered. Her father's mouth fell open. Mark whispered, "Dear God." Serenity held the phone steady as the room buzzed in disbelief. Her balance displayed numbers none of them had ever seen outside newspapers. "This is my daily account," she said softly. "Just one of them." Her father whispered, "How?" Serenity answered, "I built something. Something big." Victoria stepped forward, breath trembling. "She owns Nexus," she announced. "She's the one behind it." The room exploded, questions, accusations, shock. Serenity lifted her hand gently. "I never lied," she said. "You simply believed the version of me you expected." Silence fell thick and heavy as every Parker in the room realized the truth. Her father stood slowly, gripping the back of his chair. "Serenity, you built a billion-dollar company." His voice shook for the first time in her life. Serenity nodded gently. "Yes, Dad. While you believed I had nothing." Aunt Dorothy clutched her chest. "But we offered you receptionist roles." Cousin Brad covered his face. "I taught you budgeting." The entire table dissolved into chaos. But Serenity stayed calm, her voice steady. "I didn't come here to embarrass anyone," she said. "I came because I hoped maybe this time we could speak to each other honestly." Her words quieted the room instantly. Her grandmother, silent until now, tapped her cane on the floor. Everyone turned. "Let the girl speak," she commanded. Serenity breathed in deeply. "I left because I couldn't breathe under your expectations. I wasn't failing. I was hiding so I could grow without being crushed." Her mother covered her mouth, tears finally real. "Why didn't you tell us?" Serenity answered softly. "You never asked who I was. Only who you wanted me to be." The words struck the room like gentle lightning, soft but impossible to ignore. Her grandmother nodded, eyes shining. "I knew you had your great-grandfather's fire," she whispered. Victoria stepped forward first. "I was wrong," she said quietly. "I judged you by the path I chose, not the one you were meant for." She touched Serenity's hand. "Can we start over? As equals?" Serenity smiled softly. "Yes, I'd like that." Mark joined them, his face a mixture of awe and regret. "Serenity, sorry, you didn't disappoint us. We disappointed you." He took a shaky breath. "Maybe you can teach me something about courage." Serenity squeezed his shoulder. "You already have courage. You're just finally ready to use it." For the first time in years, the siblings stood united. But not everyone took it well. A few cousins whispered angrily, "She tricked us. She let us feel sorry for her." Uncle Robert shook his head. "Why didn't you tell us sooner?" Serenity's voice stayed calm. Because I didn't owe you proof of my worth. And because you saw my silence as failure instead of privacy. Her father's jaw tightened. But we're family, he said. We deserved the truth. Serenity met his eyes. Family should first deserve trust. The room fell quiet again. The tension wasn't hostile, just heavy with overdue truth. They were finally hearing her, perhaps for the first time. Her mother approached slowly, shaking. Serenity. I'm so ashamed. I thought you were lost. I thought you needed saving. Serenity's eyes softened. I didn't need saving, Mom. I needed space to become someone you never imagined. Tears slid down her mother's face. Can you forgive us? Serenity pulled her into a gentle embrace. I forgive you, she whispered. But things must be different now. Her mother nodded into her shoulder. They will be. The family watched this moment. Raw, quiet, honest. For once, the Parker home felt human instead of perfect. Imperfection had finally opened the door to real love. That night, Serenity packed her small travel bag in her childhood room. Victoria knocked softly. I want to visit your company, she said. I want to learn from you. Serenity smiled. I would love that. Moments later, Mark entered. I'm considering leaving the firm, he admitted. I want to build something meaningful. Serenity nodded proudly. Send me your ideas. We'll figure it out together. As they talked, Serenity realized something unexpected. She no longer felt like the outsider. She felt like the anchor. The door that once held her out now opened because she had walked back with her own strength. Before leaving the next morning, Serenity found her grandmother sitting near the window. The old woman patted the seat beside her. You remind me of my father, she whispered. They all thought he was a failure too. Until the day he changed the family forever. Serenity smiled softly. He built everything they're proud of. Her grandmother nodded. And now you've done the same. She pressed an envelope into Serenity's hand. Read it when you reach home. Serenity hugged her tightly. It was the warmest embrace she'd received all weekend, the only one that didn't come with expectations attached. The goodbye at the door felt different from her arrival. Her mother hugged her with trembling arms. Please visit again, she whispered. Not for fixing, just for being with us. Her father shook her hand, then pulled her into a brief, awkward embrace. I need time, he murmured. But I'm proud. Even if I don't understand it yet. Serenity nodded. Take all the time you need. Mark and Victoria walked her to the car, promising to call, to visit, to grow. As Serenity drove away, the estate behind her looked smaller somehow, less powerful. She had taken back the power it once held. Her penthouse in Seattle welcomed her with quiet warmth. She set down her bag, opened her grandmother's letter, and read it slowly. Success is not what they see. It's what you survive to become yourself. Serenity felt her chest tighten with emotion. She walked to the tall windows overlooking the city she had built her life in. This is home, she whispered. Her phone chimed. Messages from Mark, from Victoria, from her mother. All trying, learning, reaching. Serenity smiled. The reunion had not been easy, but it had cracked the shell of expectation that had trapped them all. Serenity stepped onto her balcony, breathing deeply as the city lights shimmered. She thought of the girl she once was, the one who walked out of medical school trembling, terrified of disappointing her family. Now she whispered, I chose myself. And that was enough. She wasn't defined by their pity, nor by their shock. She was defined by her courage to start again in her own way. The empire she built was impressive, yes. But the real success was becoming the woman who could go home, face every doubt, and still stand tall. Serenity smiled softly. Her story was finally hers.